Welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. In just a bit, I am headed out the door to check out the new indie horror, The Shade. The Shade tells the story of a young man who moves back from college, who's suffering from severe anxiety over the loss of his father. During this time, he also starts to see this very pale, strange woman who seems to be stalking him, and it seems like he's the only one who can see this strange woman. Guys, this movie looks like it's going to be an absolute creep fest, and you all know exactly how much I love my indie horror. And yes, if you watched my review of His Three Daughters, I am actually filming this directly after filming that review. So I'm actually enjoying the same frosty root beer as I was in that video. So anyways, guys, it's time for me to head out the door because I need to check out the new film, The Shade. Welcome back. Just getting home, and guys, I did enjoy this movie, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a straight-up horror film. So let's get this started, shall we? We're going to get things started with negatives and move into the positives to end the video on the ever so important high note. So what do I mean by not a straight-up horror film? Well, I feel like this movie does deliver some creepy, atmospheric moments. I don't think this movie was necessarily dedicated to trying to scare the audience. They were using the horror aspects of this film to more or less tell a metaphor, or I guess an allegory, rather than be something frightening and scary. And I did like that, and we're going to get into that because I do feel like this movie had a really good, strong message. It didn't get too awful preachy, and it did deliver it in a very good, cohesive, and coherent way. It just was not necessarily a horror movie. The movie itself is more interested in telling the message rather than trying to scare you. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because, like I said, I feel like the message of this film is extremely solid, and I did like the territory that this film went into. It's just not necessarily a scary horror film. There's not really a whole lot of blood and violence. There's not even really a whole lot of action. This is a very drama, dialogue heavy film. And while I did enjoy that, I think some people are going to feel very misled by the trailer of this film. The trailer shows a lot more creepy atmosphere than the film actually has. Like I said, this deals more with the story of the characters and not so much the horror that's happening around them. Now, that being said, I did have a really good time with this movie, and I really enjoyed a lot of things about this film. But I do think that for someone who's going into this thinking they're going to see a creepy scare fest, they may leave this movie a little disappointed. Now, if you want to see something else a little bit different and not just necessarily a straightforward story that tells you exactly what's going on and uses horror as more of an element to deliver the message of the film, then you're going to probably find a lot here. So let's move into the positives, shall we? Now, this film dives very heavily into mental illness and childhood or just family trauma and how people deal with it. And I feel feel like the film mostly focused on men and the way men deal with mental health and mental illness, and how men have this tendency to internalize their feelings and their depression and things of that sort, and they don't really necessarily like to talk or get into their feelings and be emotional or vulnerable. And this movie uses that as the demon, basically, is the depression, all of the anxiety, the mental illness, things of that sort. That is the demon that these brothers are fighting. And I think that it really did a great job of delivering the message that it was trying to. Because, I mean, honestly, guys, let's all be honest here. We know that there is a mental health issue in this country today, and there is definitely a mental health issue with young men today, because for some odd reason, our society has built up this belief system that men especially are supposed to just bottle up their feelings inside and just be a stone brick wall of just nothing and logic and all this other crap. And that is so not true. And I like the fact that this movie portrayed doing things like that as a monster, and doing things like trying to work with a therapist or just talk to your friends. I found that that was something that was very good that they showed in this film. Things that you can do. If you're somebody that can't afford to sit down and talk to a therapist, maybe you don't have health insurance or something like that, it's always good to just find somebody, a good friend, a family member, clergy, whatever, that you can sit down with and just get those nasty thoughts and those emotions out. It's okay to feel, and this movie did a good job of delivering that message. The acting in this film is also really good. I found it interesting too that the two actors that I mentioned at the beginning of my video, the stars of the film, they weren't the real shining performances. In fact, those two didn't even have that large of a role. I just think they were more well-known of actors. So when I looked it up on the IMDb, I'm not familiar with anybody's work in this, so I didn't know exactly who the real star was. But the real main character of this is Ryan, the middle brother, I want to say. They didn't really go into exactly where each brother, well, you knew who the youngest brother was. When it came to the two older brothers, it was kind of hard to tell which one was older and which one was younger. It seemed like the oldest brother was the one who came back from college, and the middle brother was the one that we're really following throughout the story by the name of Ryan. And Ryan is played by Chris Galus, and let me tell you guys, he was really good in this film. I liked his approach to his character. He has a very natural way of delivering dialogue. I really thought his performance was outstanding in this film. He had a lot of heavy lifting to do with this character, going through all of this tremendous trauma and things of that sort. And as an actor, he really delivered an outstanding performance in this film. And also, the youngest brother, Sam Duncan, he also does an outstanding job in this film. And anytime a child actor does a really good job and really convinces me of their performance, I want to make sure I say something about it. And this kid did a great job. All in all, guys, I would say that if this film is streaming in your area, very solid watch, give it a shot. I don't think that I don't think a typical like blood and guts horror fan is really going to enjoy this. But if you're someone who wants to go dive into a nice slow burn that likes to let its story kind of unfold slowly and let its characters develop in a nice slow manner, this is definitely your film. Do not go into this movie expecting it to be a scare fest. There are some very unsettling, scary moments, and this film does dive into some very uncomfortable topics that I think a lot of people just aren't going to want to talk about, but we really should. Well, alright guys, that's all I have for you today. If this is in theaters in your area and it sounds like something you should go see, or you want to see, go check it out, because always support your independent movies in theaters. That's how these things make money. I do know that this film is going to be released on streaming at some point. I'm not exactly sure when. I'm not exactly sure what streaming service. This is not a Shudder original to the best of my knowledge. So keep your eyes open for this film in your area. It only got released in a few hundred theaters to the best of my knowledge. So if it's in your area and it sounds interesting, definitely spend your money on this movie. Don't worry about the big Hollywood blockbuster. Go check out a little film for a change. Well, alright guys, that's all I have for you today. Thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.